This episode of Dead Man Walking has been brought to you by shameless political pandering, because it just makes movies great.
No!
Wrong, and you should just hit yourself in the face until you change your mind.
The gold standard for dumb storytelling.
Netflix doesn't make real movies, but controversy. Walking 2020.
Benny Doodle Cummerbund.
Good job, Luke. You did it.
What? His creepy lip. What?
I'm the new Kool-Aid Man.
Well, welcome back to Dead Man Walking. It's been a while. If you missed us, we've missed you. But,
We've been gone because Lewis was experiencing withdrawal symptoms by the lack of comic book movies that have come out the past few weeks.
it's true. I was roaming around the house, scratching my arm feverishly, watching old reruns of that Captain America movie from the 70s where he had a motorcycle helmet, and that was the best I could get. But we're back. And we have a whole new bunch of movies to talk about, but more importantly, kind of the state of Hollywood in general. Now that state is not in a good place right now.
Well, specifically the state of Disney, specifically dealing with Star Wars. In other words, their inability to deal with Star Wars.
So even though we thought that Solo was a legitimately fun movie, there's no getting around the fact that it's a flop. They're probably going to lose somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million. Just when you count in all the advertising costs. It was an incredibly expensive movie to make, and it has just severely underperformed at the box office. And Disney is using every single excuse they can, except anything to do with The Last Jedi.
It's true. I mean, the only reason why our theater, I think, was packed was because we went opening night. And so all the fans showed up. We got the people that were like clapping when the title came on, and we're like, no, calm down.
And it was a good film, but it's just like they are doing everything they can to avoid the fact that fans are sitting out Solo because they were so disgusted with The Last Jedi and they don't trust the studio to handle the franchise. They're using everything from it being white male toxicity, saying that, oh, it's because white people aren't going to the movies because they're being racist, to, oh, it's because minorities aren't going to the movies because there's too many white people in this movie, to, oh, people are just tired of Star Wars, never mind the fact that Marvel releases half a dozen movies every 6 months, to everything they can possibly think of. They're even blaming, oh, it wasn't advertised well. They were talking about that Super Bowl ad for weeks.
Well, to say that it wasn't, it might not have been advertised that well. I did hear rumors that Disney was planning on it kind of being a flop. And it doesn't hurt to have a little more, a fresher setting, like diversity. Black Panther was a huge success for a reason.
But there are
people coming in droves seeing it, and we even mentioned our review. I specifically said it is a very refreshing setting, Star Wars needs a little bit of that right now. Not specifically diversity in like types of people, but just of setting. They need to show they can do other things. Solo shows that a little bit in the sense that it's like a heist movie, but they don't do it to the same extent that, say, Marvel does with their movies. They try to rehash, Solo.
But the problem is that the entire Lucasfilm division is being helmed by somebody who has no interest in the fan base that she's meant to be pandering to. Kathleen Kennedy is basically trying to eject the Star Wars fans out of the airlock and inject her bizarre politics into literally everything she does. And as a result, it's driving the whole thing into the ground. And now there's rumors that she might actually get fired if this movie flops hard enough. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. I don't know.
I know. I've heard that from people who actually liked The Last Jedi.
I don't know why she got this job to begin with, because she has nothing but producer experience, which basically means she knows how to throw money at a problem. She's never directed a film. She's never headed up a project like this.
I don't know her backstory, her
the
past
weirder
experience at all.
And more telling thing, in my opinion, is like, after watching, even before watching Solo, is a whole bunch of internet critics are now slowly kind of backpedaling their opinion of The Last Jedi. Like the Red Letter Media guys, Half in the Bag guys, even they were taking shots at Rian Johnson when they were kind of going to bat for him in their initial review. I know, like the Angry Joe show, like Joe did a complete 180 on it. He came out loving it, and then 6 months later he's decided that he absolutely hates it. And I don't blame him. People are souring on it because they go back, they watch the DVD a second time without a theater without the noise of the advertising. They're like, wow, this movie just sucks.
And when you try to point that out, or when fans point out their frustration, the way that news kind of spins it is that, Star Wars fans rear their ugly, toxic head. And a lot of that is just highlighting the fact that, one of the easiest ways to offend people is like derogatory tweets. And one of the recent things that came from the news was Kelly Marie Tran had deleted her Twitter because she was tired of getting like racist tweets from people.
And don't get me wrong, there's definitely scumbag fans out there. That's not even up for debate. It's a thing. But they're not the reason that the whole franchise is suffering. When you go out to attack your fan base as your first defensive mechanism, that's just bad business. And Disney is discovering that they can't just coast on nostalgia and name value alone. They're going to have to start producing something original. And that kind of is not necessarily the theme, but the two movies that we wanted to talk about were Upgrade and Ocean's 8.
We saw Upgrade first. We actually recorded an episode for it. Then we decided to wait. And then we waited longer and longer. Saw several other movies.
Because the upshot is, to Upgrade, is you had a B movie that punches way above its weight. It tries to be smart and original, whereas Ocean's 8, which was meant to be like the great female reboot that America was ready for, just kind of phoned it in. And it was weird seeing those two, not quite back to back, but close enough that we could see the difference between a production that was really trying versus a production that was just expecting people to appreciate it simply for existing. And I think that's going to be a major problem that Hollywood's going to have to confront and deal with in the very immediate future.
We had interesting movies come out. There was Upgrade. There's ones that people were expecting to be good. So Ocean's 8. There was Incredibles 2.
You said Hereditary.
Hereditary
interesting.
Was really trying to push to general audiences what is called the slow burn horror. That's what apparently The Witch was a year or two ago. I didn't really like that movie.
Because it was trash?
We had to turn on subtitles half of the way through because we didn't understand what they were saying. And let's just say Hereditary has a story that's much easier to follow.
Can I just say, like, a real quick aside? My favorite part of The Witch is, like, the entire time these, like, primitive New Englander Puritans are accusing the goat of being the devil. And you're like, oh, those silly old English people. And then it turns out the goat is actually the devil. And you're like, huh. All right, then.
People went nuts over that. No, some people loved that. Did not hit us the same way.
The goat's the devil, man.
Hereditary was completely different. The whole way through, I was like sinking in my seat, like stressed out for these characters, for the drama that was going on screen. There was no jump scares throughout the whole thing up until the very end. And that's kind of what I was expecting. Something like Paranormal Activity, where suddenly it just punches you at the end. This movie just does something really bizarre, and the theater started laughing. And for a movie that you're supposed to walk away from, like, feeling, a sense of dread, you shouldn't have people laughing. This should have been test screened.
Conversely, I feel like Upgrade was a film where you left actually kind of uncomfortable. And I don't know it's because it didn't have it didn't have the ending you wanted, but it had an ending that was very final. And it's basically a movie that finally answers the age-old question: what would happen if the love child of Punisher and the $1 Million Man had a Black Mirror twist ending? And even if you weren't asking that question, it's too bad, because it's getting answered with a spot of ultra-violence. And
that ultra-violence was something that I thought was going to be prevalent in this movie.
I mean, when it was violent, it was very, very violent.
Yes, it was, but it wasn't the whole movie. So when I first saw trailers for this, I was thinking Hardcore Henry, because I was just thinking of a movie where somebody gets modified to just kill people. And that wasn't exactly what this was. Not at all.
Like, I went into Upgrade not wanting to spend the money on it, and by the time I left, I felt like the money was worth spending. And I've actually warmed to it more with more time to think about it, because when I first left, I was like, it's not bad, it could have been better, but then I compared it to a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming out right now. I was like, actually, it tried really hard. It didn't have the biggest budget. It didn't have big name actors, but it tried hard to be clever. It had a fast-paced soundtrack. It had a very good dialogue. And it actually made you ask some interesting questions, which normally a science fiction, action, horror B film doesn't really bother doing.
It's true. It was a dark, like, fun mix of sci-fi horror with a snappy coat of revenge action hero paint. The guy who stars in it, Logan Marshall Green, he looks like you've seen him in another movie. Hold on.
Really? I could not think of where I'd seen this guy before.
Maybe you'll remember he was the villain in Spider-Man Homecoming, the Shocker.
Oh, jeez.
Not the second one, the first one who
gets killed.
Who the Vulture kills by accident.
Logan Marshall Green, there's a guy that grew. He's got a great future ahead of him in Hollywood.
You said he looks like who?
He looks a lot like Tom Hardy in
That's
this
right.
film, and he acts a lot like Tom Hardy. And quite frankly, I don't know if Tom Hardy could have done a better job. Logan Marshall Green really gives a good performance in this film, and it's helped along by the script. You have these like just real visceral characters with realistic dialogue, and you feel their pain. And they're all in pain, which is kind of funny. And they're just like struggling. It's not like a dystopia. It's not like a cyberpunk world's falling apart. It's just the world has progressed.
In fact, the society, or the part of society that you see, is actually pretty comfortable. It's a very well-off couple, and it doesn't start getting dark, or it doesn't start getting, I guess, where one might start comparing it to like Blade Runner or something, until you get into, the underbelly. Well, the revenge, and when you start getting to the setting where it's the underbelly, where it's the alleyways and stuff like that.
It's like Death Wish, but with cyborgs. It's a little derivative, but they handle it well. Quick spoilers for Upgrade, I guess, just to go over a couple of good and bad things. Like, the best thing to me was the dialogue, because normally in those B movies, you can predict like what the next line is going to be, and I like to sit there and do that because I'm weird, and I was always wrong every time. I was like, dang it, because they kept the dialogue realistic and believable, and it was surprisingly good.
My favorite part about that walking out was I had a sense. It reminded me of BioShock a little bit, where when you first start BioShock as like a first-person shooter, you think, okay, it's just this standard setting where you're some random guy who doesn't talk, who just happens to be thrust into this crazy situation. You're the only one who can save the day, yada, yada, yada. This movie seems to start with similar sort of revenge story cliches, and then as the plot starts to reveal itself, as layers start to unfold, you're like, oh, this is actually what was happening. And it starts to like turn on its head a little bit as you start to realize who is actually in control.
If you've seen the trailer, you've seen the first half of the film. This guy's wife gets killed and he gets paralyzed, and a millionaire basically fixes him with a computer chip AI thing that controls his body for him. But this film took it to a really dark place, and they committed. Like, the big twist is the guy who installed the AI helping Gray Trace, the main character, karate chop hired goons into the next life, was actually the bad guy all along. Except the real twist is that the AI was actually controlling the bad guy too, and the real bad guy was the AI all along.
This sounds crazy, but it's played so well. And it's not like laughable once you get to the end. It's actually genuinely, oh shoot, because this is what's going on.
That's not even the last twist. The last twist, you think, oh, he did it. He got past the AI. He defeated it. And then it snaps back and the AI is like, I broke his brain. I have his body now. You're just like, dude.
It's nuts. I love it.
The downside is they've got some plot holes in there. They had like the random hacker with a little bit of just like dialogue vomit that they spewed out that didn't really go anywhere.
Actually, comparing this to our next movie, the hacker in this was probably worse than the hacker in our next movie.
That's true. But you also
that's the one thing that Ocean's 8 has.
You also had it wasn't super focused as to the message it wanted to tell, and there was there were just some awkward effects, like there's a scene where a guy sneezes out nanobots to kill someone else, and you get this like slow motion zoom in of the mucus traveling across, and these little bladed nanobots in it. It just looks like CGI from the late 90s, and it's really weird and cringy and doesn't come into play ever again.
Yeah, it looks like something that could have been in like a Matrix movie. I didn't like it. The worst scene for me, this movie has the worst car chase I think I've ever seen. Or maybe it just feels like the worst car chase because every other action sequence in the movie feels very smart and clever. This car chase, it's like...
It was boring.
Oh my gosh. What was the car? I wrote down Firebird, but I know that's wrong.
I don't remember, but they're basically just like weaving through rush hour traffic. It's just like, I don't know if they're getting a car chase or if he's just trying to get home before the Sopranos rerun comes on. I don't know.
It felt like they were just shooting the same, like snapping between the same couple shots a couple different times. Like it felt like they were reusing footage to make it longer. Like I didn't understand.
At the end of the day, it could have used a lot of polish, and I think that if they had a A-list budget, A-list actors, they could have made a pretty great film. But as it was, for a B-list movie, it punched way above its weight. It showed up to play. I mean, well, it's worth seeing. Maybe not in theaters, but definitely it's gonna wind up on Netflix.
Well, and I'm starting to get an idea for why Blumhouse is considered special, I think, in this area. And it's sort of like Netflix movies, where they seem to be just kind of taking risks with a lot of different weird ideas. I mean, yeah, they're all horror thriller movies that they seem to be putting out.
It's good that somebody's taking risks, because Ocean's 8 took literally no risks whatsoever.
No. An all-female reboot at this point, it's demanded so much, it's not even a risk anymore. It's just something that maybe you should try if it seems like it'll be a good idea. So that doesn't count.
Even in like the execution of the film of Ocean's 8 itself, there was just nothing risky about it.
No,
and that's
before I saw the film, somebody recommended it to me. They said, "Oh, you'll like it. It's like
the trailer makes it look amazing."
Well, they specifically said, "Oh, it's basically just an Ocean's movie. Like it's good." And I'm like,
okay, it's like an Ocean's movie is good. It's fast. It's snappy.
I liked Ocean's 11. I'm like, sure, that's the only one I saw, but I liked it. And
it's the opposite of Upgrade. You have an A-list movie with A-list celebrities and an A-list budget, and they just kind of phoned it in from start to finish. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of mad about it because I was really looking forward to another Ocean's movie.
That wasn't the Ghostbusters reboot.
Ocean's 8.
I was looking forward to an all-female cast that didn't include Melissa McCarthy.
Ocean's 8 should have been great. It should have been the fun, popcorn-munching summer blockbuster reboot that the trailer made it look like. It was supposed to be the first good all-female reboot, picking up the mantle from where Ghostbusters has been kind of like rolling around in the mud with it. They had an easy theme to follow, enough star power that, I mean, like, the women in it, they had, like 6 Oscars between them. Who knows how many Grammys and Emmys. They infiltrate the Met Gala, and just watching all these super famous people act as, like, unnoticed in the crowd is a little surreal, but everything in the film should have been great. And it wasn't.
It's not that it was a bad movie. I didn't think it was bad. I felt towards it the same way I feel about, I think, Men in Black 2. And that is, when you're watching Men in Black 2, you're like, yeah, this is entertaining. But then you walk away from it and you forget about it.
There's none of the magic. There's none of the zip. There's none of the zing. The parts were there, but the Ocean's 8 just had no idea how to put them together.
And I don't have any problems with, like, the people they pick or for the characters they put them in. They just...
And that's what
they didn't let them shine enough. They didn't let them pop enough. I don't know what
I think that's one of the reasons I'm so mad is because, like, you have all these great actresses. I love Sandra Bullock. I think Mindy Kaling is hilarious. Helena Bonham Carter just plays herself in every single film she's in, but that's okay.
Her and Mindy Kaling, I thought, were the better part of this movie. Like unfortunately, the Debbie Ocean, who's supposed to be like replacing Danny Ocean as the mastermind.
How was Sandra Bullock the weakest part of that film? How did that happen? Who let that happen?
The most memorable parts for me were the very beginning when she first get out of prison and she's like stealing
just
stuff,
watching just like how she goes grifting through life, and then they just stop it completely and it stops being fun. It's like the trailer, you get like the frenetic jump cuts, the poppy music, the snappy dialogue, and they just dropped all of that for this long, slow, almost boring heist movie that was just wearing an Ocean's 11 mask over it the whole time.
Among all the female reboots that were announced, this is the one I was the most excited for just from the trailer, because I thought, oh, Sandra Bullock is in it. She's good. Oh, Cate Blanchett. Oh, and then what? Anne Hathaway? I love Anne Hathaway.
And again, like the trailer, like the way they're zipping around, you're like, oh man, there's the dialogue, the jokes in this movie, that this movie is just going to be straight fire from start to finish. And it's not. It is not. They just linger over every dumb, drawn-out sequence they can with, like, maybe a few exceptions. But
it does feel like an Ocean sequel in the sense that it has all the parts it's supposed to.
But a sleepy one.
Yes.
A sleepy one.
It has all, like, the music, the transitions, like all the stuff is there. It just gets boring.
The crackle that the predecessors had is completely missing. Even the color palettes in this film are subdued and washed out, which is incredible when you consider that they're robbing the Met Gala, which is like in the middle of New York City and is one of the most ostentatious parties that's thrown in America.
I did like that the movie, it was very aware of its social politics in kind of the best way.
It didn't really get into it too much, which I think is a good thing.
Right. So one of my favorite... it does everything it needs to essentially kind of please feminists without spoon-feeding it as if to annoy everyone else. In other words, it kind of handles politics like Marvel has in the past, just very easy to consume, and
it
nobody's
skirts around the edges, but it doesn't slap you in the face.
One of my favorite scenes was Sandra Bullock. This is the other probably more memorable part that she had in this. She's in the bathroom, and she's talking in the mirror like she's about to give a speech to everybody, and she's saying, remember, like, we're not doing this for us, or we're not doing this for the... We're doing this for the little girl at home that wants to be a criminal.
And like, yeah, like it had those like bright moments in there when you could almost see the movie that should have been. Yeah. Instead, you got the movie that was. It wasn't bad, but it was like that pizza place down the corner you've been to too many times, and the cheese is starting to taste a little rubbery, and you're just sick of it.
I like it. It's, just...
Like I said, like I didn't like Sandra Bullock in it. Like she's playing the previously unmentioned sister of Danny Ocean, and like between her and Cate Blanchett, who's her best friend, possibly something more, there's just no chemistry. Nothing.
Yeah.
They just recite their lines to each other and anyone else in the room without ever building that silent understanding that Clooney and Pitt had. Like Rihanna's essentially a cameo with the amount of screen time she had. I don't even know why she was there.
Her on-screen time was all right, though.
It was all right, but they just criminally underused her.
After having seen Valerian and her part in that, I can sort of see why...
She was in Valerian?
Yeah, you remember that movie, right?
I don't remember Rihanna.
She was the blob. She was the blob chick.
Oh,
she has
right,
the whole sequence.
I remember that.
Dancing in like
I remember it.
My point is,
Valerian, ladies and gentlemen, very memorable film.
My point is, she's not a bad actress. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing her in more stuff.
But like, yeah, but Ocean's 8, it's not a bad film. It's just. It's mildly entertaining, but it with the amounts of star power they had, it commits the unforgivable sin of being completely derivative and forgettable, which is frustrating considering what they had to work with.
Debbie Ocean, so Sandra Bullock's character, she's Danny Ocean's sister, and she keeps comparing herself to Danny Ocean. We keep getting... There shouldn't have been so many scenes of her visiting his tomb.
Oh, yeah. Danny Ocean is dead, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
They just, like, whipped that one out right at the beginning. Apparently, he died in 2018. No rhyme or reason or explanation other than the fact, I guess, George Clooney didn't want to make a cameo.
Well, I don't know if they didn't reveal it or if we just didn't notice it until the very end, the 2018. When they first said that he was dead, I thought, okay.
No, she visits his crypt right off the bat. It's right there. Boom. Danny Ocean died 2018.
My first thought was, wait, so did he die in, like, Ocean's 13? There was like a gun on the on one of the pictures for that. Maybe there was a firefight.
Nope. Unless he took a really long time to die.
They didn't need to connect to George Clooney's character somehow. In fact, it would have been more interesting if there was some sort of sibling rivalry thing going on there. Something else so that, yeah, we can connect it, but we don't need to try to put her in those same shoes. Give her a different set of shoes to fill.
It's another case of like there was so much potential that they just didn't even try to tap into. Nothing.
The twists at the end weren't interesting, if you can even call them that.
Well, there was no twist. That was the other thing that really bugged me.
It was just the heist ended, and then they tried to draw your interest with a couple other things, and it wasn't working.
The movie went on for a good, 30, 40 minutes after the ending. And it was like the writer of the film just kept coming up with other great heist ideas and just tacked them on after the fact. It's like, oh, by the way, while you guys are doing this other stuff, also this happened. And it's like, it should be a big deal, but no one cares. And as a result, the audience doesn't really care either.
It shouldn't come as a surprise that there was definitely no interesting or memorable male characters. But the most prevalent one was this just British twerp playing Debbie Ocean's ex.
As in, you knew he was going to be the bad guy from the very get-go. The guy just walks on screen like a slime ball.
He's the most predictably stupid thing in this movie. He's just the British prick. That's it. And you just know, okay, they're going to do some revenge thing on him. He's going to be the whipping boy. I see where this is going.
Honestly, the two best things in this film, in my opinion, was the score. I liked the music.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked Anne Hathaway because she was the only character who seemed to be actually having fun. The actress herself seemed to be having fun. Everyone else is just there.
Anne Hathaway's great. I could watch some more Anne Hathaway things.
We talked about the weird twist ending. The chemistry between everyone is just jacked up. No one really seems to click with anybody else, and it really shows. You get this awkward, sad moment at the end where everyone's we're just here because we don't have any other friends. And it's are friendships really that hard for middle-aged women to cultivate? I'm not a middle-aged woman. I don't know.
Well, that would have been better if that was a theme throughout the movie. But it wasn't touched on.
It's just this sad revelation, oh, by the way, none of us have friends. None of you? I don't know, not a book club or drinking buddies or somebody to go golfing with. Nobody? And honestly, I was also really bugged by the awkward, minimal cameos they did have. It's they picked the two... They dragged Carl Reiner out of his casket for a 45-second conversation with Sandra Bullock to try and give her some weight as Danny Ocean's sister. And then they have that Asian guy show up at the end, just as a once-off. Okay.
We need flexible Asian man to grab the jewels for us.
They literally get back to their hideout.
And they're like, oh, by the way, we did have a guy in the heist.
Well, yeah, they're just okay, the heist was successful, but while you guys were doing this heist, we also had this Asian guy steal everything else. It's just why did these... So it's the main heist was a diversion, but not... But it doesn't... It's not interesting because it's just thrown on to the end. The very end. Yeah. There's one callback in that final sequence with the Asian guy from the earlier part, but you don't get the joy of seeing them build the heist like you did with the first one. You don't feel the same joy when they pull it off because there's no risk. They just kind of wander in, take some stuff, and wander back out again. And even when the little insurance investigator is onto them, it's he doesn't really care. And so they don't care. And so we don't care.
This movie is a solid 2 out of 4 stars. It's just...
It's a 3. It's a 3.
It's a 3?
It's entertaining.
You think it's a 3? If you really like the Ocean's movies and you just needed another one, then yeah, this works. It's fun enough to watch. It's got the colorful and snappy cinematography. This is that film
where you're on vacation and you're in the hotel room. It's 11 o'clock at night. You're just flipping through the TV channels. It comes on and you think, I'll watch this. And you wind up staying up until 1 and you don't really hate yourself because it was okay. That's what this movie is.
Unlike The Incredibles 2.
Oh my word! Seriously, Ocean's 8 was lazy. Incredibles 2, that movie was 14 years in the making just because Brad Bird was not willing to be lazy with it. And that, I think, is the lesson Disney needs to learn.
That one was one where it felt like the last movie in the best way possible. It uses all of its new technology, all the new things that Pixar has been putting out. It's still, we just pick up right where we left off. And it's wonderful. It's magical.
And it also doesn't give in to the real low-hanging social justice fruit that the trailers kind of present it with. With all these films about...
Well, it kind of gave it exactly what the trailers presented it with.
It gave it the credence it deserves, and that is everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and everybody needs everybody else. And that's a message that, like, with all these girl power reboots, and oh my word, the Ocean's 8 movie had every single girl movie trailer at the beginning of it. It was hilarious.
The thing that was fun about The Incredibles, where, you know, they have Elastigirl goes out, and she's going to be the one that does this job to sort of bring supers back into the sunlight, as they put it, is that Mr. Incredible, he's just mad not because, like, there's a girl doing it, but because he just has such a big ego. Like, he needs to do
It's
it.
not so much an ego, but he wants to be out there doing it, and
Yeah.
he can. And they don't make it, like, he still supports his wife. The other thing I liked about The Incredibles is he's also a good dad. Normally, like, that movie, you're like, oh, hey, he's just like Homer Simpson. He's a moron. He can't help the kids. Only mom can. It's like, no. He pulls it off, and mom comes back, and he's a little rough around the edges. It's a little crazy, but kids are alive. They learned how to do some math. It's like, they didn't use him as a punching bag either. It's like, look, this is a dynamic family. This is how real life works.
In the most caricatured and fun way possible. That is The Incredible strength. That's what it was in the first movie. It was when basically Brad Bird came in and said, okay, we got to stop doing these lifelike looking humans. Everything's going to be much more expressive and stylized. And this movie continues that trend. One of the things I was thinking about was the other supers that come in partway through the movie that we've never seen before. These are the people that, like, desperately need supers to be legal again. Because they can't, like, it seems like they don't have much else. Like, these people literally look like freaks. Like, they're just weird looking people. And like,
I'm
weird
Brick.
people. Yeah. The most normal one was maybe that girl who had, like, the portal powers. But even she was very, like, timid and kind of awkward, and you could really tell that
the movie was about how
real.
you need other people. No one can go it alone. Yeah. And they also had, like, a good sub message about how, like, you need to get out there and experience things. But it's just like all these movies put together just shows, like, the weird spot that Hollywood's in right now, because they don't. It's like they've forgotten how good movies work. And you have Pixar is still able to consistently perform, but Disney especially needs to learn that you have to be willing to put the thought into creating the script, and you can't just pander, because pandering won't pay off. Like,
no,
Ocean's 8
it's gonna make some people happy, and it's gonna piss everyone else off.
Ocean's 8 is making money, but it's still underperforming. And now that The Incredibles has sucked all the oxygen out of the box office, you're probably going to see a real steep drop-off for everything else. Solo is tanking. The Disney Star Wars franchise is in just absolute jeopardy because they have no idea what to do with it. And, I mean, good Lord, I'm looking forward to Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, whatever the heck it is, because sure, let's get more derivative bullcrap in there while we can.
Talk about uninspired sequels.
Dude, we're going to go see this movie. We're going to tell you all about it. It's going to be the dumpster fire that Solo wasn't. I guarantee you.
Ooh.
We'll see if
That's
I'm wrong
what
the second
we're
time,
counting
but I don't think so.
That's what we're counting
I don't
on.
think so.
I don't think Goldblum can save this one either.
I heard a rumor that he's, like, barely even in it. And I'm just like, why would you tease that if you're not going to have him do something?
It's the same reason they teased Harrison Ford in Blade Runner 2049. It's the same reason they teased Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman. They know what's popular, and they realize, oh, maybe we should have had more of this in the movie. Well, let's just advertise more of it and see if we can fool people.
This is what you have when you see, like, there's never been a sharper difference between a corporate-led film and a film that's clearly led by a director or a writer who has a story they want to tell.
Who wants to put heart into the movie? Who wants to put a soul into what he created?
Like an upgrade, that soul is ugly, but it's there.
Oh, it's
unusual.
It is a very ugly soul. It is
Ocean's 8.
Body horror.
It's a mildly entertaining, paint-by-the-numbers excursion that's barely worth the money you pay to see it.
For all the crap I give Hereditary, like, they really did try with that one too, but it's...
At this point, we are willing to give credit to studios that try.
I am, yeah.
Instead, we're going to go see giant CGI dinosaurs.
Rawr.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dead Man Walking.
Did you know that the raptors are turtles having sex?